Question: why are some of my equitable friends expressing empathy with the Right Honourable Miss Diane Abbott MP?
Nigel.CECil, calling things out as you like it, especially for his fair-minded friends.
Chuckabout is welcome. Thank you for joining me, moi, Nigel.CECil, and regular viewers will know, ably assisted by my very good friend Hilary. And you'll also know that we endeavour together to respond to your comments, views, observations and questions sent in to us, and then present them in the form of a video in the hope that on your behalf we may stimulate some informed discussion. Now, the headline topic for this video is some of you wishing to express a view that you have empathy with the Right Honourable Miss Diane Abbott MP. So what is this all about? Well, when we discussed it with you, you said it concerns the complaints process and not the charges. So we're not discussing anti-Semitism charges against Diane Abbott MP. We're discussing the complaints process. And indeed, when we refer to any member within equity regarding the complaints process, we're in no way saying that they are being anti-Semitic, though there will be some equity members who may well say there is good reason to believe that equity itself, under its current policy and the way it is being driven, could have a charge of anti-Semitism brought against it. But that's another matter. We're setting that aside and just discussing the complaints process, because it has been said by some that what equity does today, the Labour Party, well, they mirror a few years later. And so what equity started a couple of years back is that now being mirrored by the Labour Party, because there has been an exponential growth within equity of complaints against members. Now, we may only discuss it on an anecdotal basis, because the information is always deemed private and confidential. So members themselves are somewhat afraid of saying to others what is going on. So one may only glean information on an anecdotal basis from social media. But if you look at what's being said on social media, there is cause for concern that the complaints process within equity is no longer fair and equitable, in the same way that the complaint against Diane Abbott seems to have dragged on and on and on, and no one is sure what's happening. Is that fair? Is that reasonable? And is it also the form that the older you are, the more likely you are to have complaints made against you? Now, in equity, the trade union for professional actors, variety entertainers and other creators across the United Kingdom, it's fair to say there is a broad spectrum of age ranges who are members of equity, but now there is a drive to promote younger members. Younger members are more important. So, is there a need to discard the views of older members? With their experience, may they be a problem for those who are determined to drive forward a socialist, radical, progressive campaigning agenda, an ideology that transcends, well, being equal and fair to everyone? Because since the demise of the variety branches, well, complaints have been brought both before and after, and you'd say, what's that all about, Hilary? But we can't discuss the actual information because it's all anecdotal. But there is now a fear within equity members. If you pop your head above the parapet, well, you're putting yourself forward to have a complaint made against you. Indeed, there are those who have said that moi, Nigel, moi, in my alter ego, may be attracting the possibility of complaints because I am a certain age, and I am expressing views which don't currently enjoy the support of those who are being driven by an ideological agenda. So on that basis, some of you have got together and said, Nigel, we ought to have these points clearly demonstrated within equity. So what do you think about the complaints process? What would this mean if this had been applied to the Labour Party or the Conservative Party or any political party for that matter, or a trade union, and especially equity? First of all, that the complaints process should be transparently fair and independent. Is it? Secondly, it should ensure it's free of any perception of bias being possible. Now, bias doesn't mean actual bias. It means the perception of bias. So everything within the complaints procedure, if it's totally contained within equity and members against members, especially when some of those members enjoy the majority overwhelming support of the council, could that be seen to be without bias or the perception of bias? Can it really be a fair hearing in a fair court? And also, particularly applicable to Diane Abbott and to equity members, especially the older ones, who may feel as though they're being attacked, they're being abused, they're being harassed by a complaint that drags on and on and on, especially after all the years of devotion they've given to equity, being an unpaid volunteer helping other equity members. Does that seem fair? Just because the ideology of equity has changed, well, what you've been doing for years, well, of course, it stands in the way of us being progressive. So that one, and so the timescale is important. And then justice is not only done, but seen to be done. So if anything is, everything is kept private and confidential, and the punishment is dispensed private and confidentially, and you're not supposed to tell anyone else, what do you do? Well, we know of one member who've actually said that they've walked away from equity, having been an honorary life member, walking away from their own trade union that's been part of their life. When someone might say, well, of course we don't like the way you express things nowadays. We're actors, we're entertainers. We don't suddenly say, I'm at a meeting and this is a safe space, so I will put aside my entertainment persona and suddenly be... We don't do that, do we? We're entertainers. Give us a mic, flash a light at us, we're off, we're doing things. So surely one should take that into account when you're bringing complaints against members, especially long-serving members. And then we go on. The punishment for the crime is equally and equitably fair and not disproportionate. So if you're biased in some way and you have an ideology, well, are you going to say, well, we're going to punish you that way because you're not one of us? And someone who is one of us, well, you know, we all make mistakes. And we can forgive mistakes, can't we? Equally and fairly for everyone. And then, when you bring the punishment, even if the crime exists, because you may be biased in the way you determine it, is it equally applied? So no matter what their age or any other characteristics or belief, that it's equally and fairly applied, especially when equity is now being driven by an ideological agenda. So those are the questions. And that's why my fair-minded and equitable friends are expressing sympathy with Diane Abbott MP, the Right Honourable Diane Abbott MP. Because no matter what, if you've given your dedication, your life, to a cause, to a purpose, helping others, surely you deserve the respect of not having your complaints process dragged on and on and on, wondering what's going to happen to you. That is unfair. So once again, over to you. What do you think?